participants. I think we're ready to rock and roll. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this town hall. For those of you who I have not met, I am Kim DeSilva. I'm the CEO here at Community Food Share. And I know after, at least for us and for a lot of our community members, there is a lot of questions and curiosity about the effects of the bill that just passed. And so we wanted to have an opportunity to bring together our community to talk through some of the ramifications of the bill and what that's going to do for our country and our community. I love to see that we have a great variety of people on this call from our partner agencies who distribute food out to the communities, to our volunteers and donors. So thank you all so much for coming together to learn. As many of you know, Community Food Share is part of Feeding America, which is a national food bank network. And as such, there are 5 Feeding America food banks in Colorado. And so together we have an organization called Feeding Colorado, which is in essence the entities, all 5 food banks come together and work on statewide initiatives to really help us move further in feeding our communities all across the state. And Feeding Colorado, a lot of the work in which they do is focused around advocacy, what's happening on a federal as well as state level, and how that affects our local communities. So I am just so thrilled today to be able to introduce you to Mandy Nuku, who is the executive director of Feeding Colorado, as well as Ron Meehan, who is the government relations manager for Feeding Colorado. And I've asked them to come here and do a presentation on kind of the bill and all of the kind of ramifications through that bill for us. If you have any questions as we're going along, if you could throw those into the chat, that would be great. We'll kind of keep an eye on that, and we'll have plenty of time for any questions and conversations that anyone would like to have. So I'm going to turn it over to the folks at Feeding Colorado and let them take it away.
Bear with me just a moment. Let me make sure I get the right presentation up. Sorry, folks.
That's all right. Yeah, I was going to say, Ron, you might need to refresh that SharePoint link, technical challenges. Anyway, thank you all. Thanks for the introduction, Kim. I'm Mandy Nuku, the Executive Director of Feeding Colorado. We have been actively engaging with our federal delegation, our members of Congress and their staff over this last year. That's part of our ongoing work, as well as the governor's office and our state legislators in discussing our network, how we fit into a lot of the work that's happening and some of the changes at the federal level. So as you can see, Kim mentioned the 5 food banks. Together, we serve every county in Colorado alongside about 1,200 partner agencies. Ron, you can go to the next one. I'm just going to give a very brief overview of our work. I do think it's important to acknowledge what our mission and our vision are in the state, and that is to improve food security through policy, advocacy, partnership, and education. And we do that through the 5 food bank staff, volunteers, neighbors, as well as our legislators at the state and federal level. And our vision is a future where everyone in Colorado has equitable access to the food they need to thrive. The way we organize our policy priorities is, what are we doing to nourish neighbors now? So that looks like leveraging agriculture, retailer partnerships, food sourcing, retail rescue, working with the state legislature to have funds to support the purchase of Colorado agriculture products. We look at food and health, and we are involved in some Medicaid, housing and nutrition efforts. And then we also address what are we doing to reduce food insecurity? So that looks like the federal work we're doing around SNAP, focusing on child tax credit, things like that. And then the last piece of our policy priorities is about eliminating food insecurity. And when we talk about that, we mean that our network becomes truly emergent rather than a part of neighbors' ongoing strategy for self-sufficiency, so that our network is really used in those emergent situations. Ron, if you want to go to the next one. So what we have been doing, probably if you are following media and all of this, As a network, we have been meeting with our legislators. We did host Gabe Evans at World Food Bank. We have done a town hall with farmers, retailers, neighbors around SNAP with Senator Bennett. We have gone to DC. We've brought members of Congress as well as state legislators to the food banks, to partner agencies, or to farmers that we work with that will be impacted particularly heavily by these cuts to SNAP. So very actively engaged at the federal level and also at the state level. Okay, so we're gonna do a little overview of what was happening before the federal legislation, and then I'm gonna turn it over to Ron to talk about the impacts of our network. You're welcome to put questions in the chat and we'll address those towards the end of the call. So we'll be monitoring that. So please put in your questions as they come up. So before budget reconciliation, and I just want to name a couple things generally, that this is very confusing. So if you feel like you have no idea what's going on, that's pretty accurate because, there was a House version, the Senate version, and then kind of what's come together, and there's varying timelines of these different impacts. But SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, previously referred to as food stamps, is our most effective hunger program. We often refer to that as the first line of defense for food insecurity. For every one meal our network can provide, SNAP can provide 9. SNAP benefits are currently 100% federally funded. And the cost of administrating SNAP is a 50-50 split. So right now, Colorado provides 50% of that funding and the federal government matches that 50%. According to the USDA estimates that for every dollar spent using SNAP, $1.50 is generated in economic activity. We have about 3,100 retailers that participate that accept SNAP benefits across Colorado. Currently, SNAP provides support to about 615,000 Coloradans, including, as you can see, about 24,000 in community food shares service area. And then I'm going to turn it over to Ron to talk a little bit about the impacts and the timing of those impacts.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mandy. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Ron Meehan. I'm the Government Relations Manager for Feeding Colorado. First, just want to thank Kim, Community Food Share, and all of you in the network and recognize the amazing work that you're doing on the ground to meet the high level of need right now with limited resources. I wish we were here under better circumstances. The overarching message with this budget reconciliation package that is passed is that we as a network are going to be expected to do a lot more with a lot less. We do expect to see a pretty significant increase in need, longer lines at all of your food banks and partner agencies. What I can say, at least with the advocacy and government relations lens, is that the passage of this bill isn't the end. It's certainly a call to action for our network. We're going to do everything we can to try to mitigate the damage done from this and to undo what we can. Really, based on an analysis from the Urban Institute, Colorado will see a pretty significant impact on those that are reliant on SNAP and food assistance. There's really no way to sugarcoat this. It will impact all 615,000 Coloradans that are supported by this program, including the nearly 24,000 across Boulder and Broomfield counties. There's a projection that around 298,000 families, Colorado families that are on the program, will lose some or all of their SNAP benefits. I don't know that we need to go through every single one of these numbers line by line, but you can see that it is a pretty significant impact in terms of the funds that families are going to have to be able to purchase food. And we know that when SNAP doesn't work or when this program is cut in any way, we see those folks turning to our network to get food to make up the difference. Oops. So wanted to go over a couple of specific provisions, and I know that this is it's a lot of information and some of it's more nuanced. So I'm glad that we have time at the end, and we're happy to I'm happy to provide my information to make sure that folks can follow up to break this down further. One of the big changes to the program is forcing states to pay a percentage of benefits. As Mandy had said, historically, SNAP has been 100% funded by the federal government. This goes into effect on October 1st of 2027 or the start of FY 2028. Depending on what the error rate is for Colorado, we will have to pay somewhere between 5% of the percentage of SNAP benefits to 15%, which is estimated to be somewhere between $135 million and $195 million each year. We know the state of Colorado is particularly poor positioned to make up the difference from these cost shares because of Tabor and an inability to collect new revenue. And this is really going to put our state legislators in a difficult position where they're forced to choose between other essential services that the state provides and backfilling these benefits that historically have been paid by the federal government. It says here, I know that, the payment is triggered at a 6% error rate. For context, just so everybody knows, there's actually only one state in the country that has not fallen into this category over the course of the last 2 years. So there is very much an expectation that every state in the country is going to be subject to this. There was a carve out specifically from Senator Murkowski to get her vote, which actually incentivizes temporarily state agencies to have higher error rates. So states that have an error rate higher than 13.3%, the cost share won't go into effect for an additional year. So again, I'll try not to get too nuanced here. It's very easy to get into the weeds with these, but just trying to kind of analyze the specific state impacts.
Ron, can we back up a quick second? I just want to let everybody know what the SNAP payment error rate. So that's a measurement of how accurately a state determines eligibility and benefit amounts for participating households. So that can include overpayments, underpayments, and also delays in payments. Colorado is particularly complicated, like many of the states in our Mountain Plains region, which is a region defined by the USDA. Because we are a county administered state, so many states that administer SNAP, it's statewide. We have one system, whereas Colorado has many systems for doing this, sharing information back and forth with the state. So that does make some of this more challenging. So that is that piece. And when we talk about the error rates and SNAP administration, a piece of that is SNAP outreach. And outreach really should be called what I say we should call it as SNAP application assisters. It is staff in our network. 4 of the 5 food banks have staff that help neighbors provide the right documentation, make sure they qualify for SNAP, and really help with addressing that error rate. And so that's a piece kind of we'll talk about as we go forward, but hopefully that kind of clears up what the error rate is.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up too. So I should flag a portion of the amount that the state will have to pay will actually be shouldered by the counties. They're estimating currently that it'll be around $24 million that the individual counties collectively will have to come up with, which they're poorly suited to do because they're unable to raise taxes in the same way that the state or the federal government could. So did want to flag that as well. So another big piece is increasing the percentage that states have to pay to administer SNAP. As Mandy had said, historically, there has always been a 50-50 state-federal split where the federal government pays half the cost and the state picks up the other half. In this legislation, it will increase that by 50% so that states now have to pay 75% of the cost to administer the program. That goes into effect in FY 2027 or October 1st, 2026. The estimate for the state of Colorado is $92.8 billion that the state will have to come up with. Again, a percentage of that or a certain part of that funding will go specifically to counties to have to pay, which again, operating in a time that just in the last legislative session, there was a $1.3 billion deficit. It really puts state legislators in a difficult place. So this is just kind of an breaking down some of those numbers from earlier in terms of how it's going to impact families with children, and working families specifically, with a pretty significant reduction in benefits. So another major piece, and this goes into effect upon passage. So we expect this to immediately start impacting our network here in the course of the next couple of weeks. Currently, folks, prior to the passage of this bill, folks that were below the age of 54 were required to be working if they were receiving SNAP, if they were an able-bodied adult without dependents. But this bill has raised the number from 54 to 65. There's an estimated about 900,000 adults that will fall into this category, many of which are estimated to lose benefits as a result of that. So if they are not working within 3 months on SNAP, then they'll lose their benefits for 3 years. It also redefines the age of a dependent child as those under the age of 14. So if you have a child that is above the age of 14, then you would be subject to these work requirements. It also eliminates the exemptions that had previously existed for veterans, individuals that were homeless, as well as former foster youth. And that's, again, a little bit over a 250,000 people that fall into to that category. We're going to be talking about the elimination of certain work waivers that states have historically been able to apply for, that unfortunately have also been eliminated, which will further kind of compound those issues.
Ron, if we can just pause a quick second. I just want to name, going back to the previous slide, because as a lot of these cuts and the impacts to the network does feel very heavy, but I would like to name one piece about the dependent children. Because the initial version of this started with a dependent being children under 7. So that was something we were able to talk to a lot of the Republican leadership in many states in the Feeding America network, particularly at the state association level, on those impacts about childcare. We certainly know rural communities would be very heavily impacted where there's already childcare shortages if you have to work, and that very slippery slope between the benefit cliff and dropping off of those things. So I do think it's important to highlight the very intentional advocacy that went around, like adding some work requirements for parents and particularly single parents with dependents, about that change, because that is a pretty significant change from 7 to 14. So not a lot of silver linings, but one piece there that is positive as a result of a lot of intentional advocacy.
And Mandy, there's another question regarding counties have no ability to raise taxes. From Matt, just it says, I presume sales tax or mill levies, but the latter is more schools and school districts.
Correct. Yeah. So, obviously there's going to be a delayed timeline between what a county could do to raise taxes through these different pieces, obviously up to, ballot measures, where you're going to see the impacts to these far earlier than you would be able to address them through revenue raising measures like mill levies, et cetera. Okay, go ahead, Ron.
No problem. Yeah, sorry, I'm not able to monitor the chat, so I'm glad you feel free to stop us as we go here. There have been some pretty significant changes to what's called the Thrifty Food Plan, or the TFP. That is the mechanism that determines benefit levels per person per day. It's normally calculated in the Farm Bill, which is this overarching piece of legislation that encompasses at least historically most agriculture and federal nutrition programs. On average, prior to the passage of this bill, for context, it was about $6.11 per person per day. What this legislation has done is severely restricted the ability of the Thrifty Food Plan to adjust for the actual cost of food. So it's now set only to be adjusted based on inflation and not those reevaluations. This is important to note that it actually isn't just SNAP, but it does impact quite a few other federal nutrition programs. We don't have all of the details just yet, but we know that it's likely to impact summer EBT, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, which is one of the flagship programs of our network. It represents about 20% of the total food distributed by the Feeding America network. Those programs are also likely to be impacted by these Thrifty Food Plan updates. Couple other pieces. We had mentioned the work waiver restrictions. So we recognize that in some parts of the country, it is much harder to find work than in others. Something that we always emphasize is that the vast majority of the people that are on this program that can work do work. This essentially eliminates the ability for states to waive for being subject to the work requirements, which is likely to throw many thousands of people off of their benefits. All of these things are all kind of happening at once here. Funding for SNAP education for nutrition education and obesity prevention is going to end effective September 30th of this year, after FY 2026. And then a provision that's particularly harmful for folks that are living in areas that have very, very high utility costs or kind of extreme weather conditions is the ability for families to be able to deduct high utility costs. That'll likely impact the level of benefits that folks receive and whether or not they're eligible for things like the standard utility allowance.
Okay, so I realize that's a lot of information, but we will continue to provide presentations. We are regularly updating our website with information. You'll see some previous statements that were done in partnership with the governor's office and the Department of Human Services. So we will make sure to post these updates. You're always welcome to reach out to us. And really one of the most important pieces is that we're actively building out our advocate network. So whether you are a volunteer, a donor, a board member, a partner agency, and are interested in getting more involved, please, you can see this sign up on our website. We are on all social media channels. This QR code will take you to the sign up. And some of those pieces include, like when we went to DC in March, as a network, we were one of the few organizations that brought partner agencies. We also brought neighbors with lived experience, and that's something we'll continue to do and elevate as the hunger relief partners, whether you're a food pantry, a shelter, a wraparound service center, are closest to the work in terms of hearing from neighbors and what this experience is like and how it's impacting that. So that is a big part of our work as we move forward, both at the state level and at the federal level. So be sure to check out our website or take this QR code to get you to that form. And then I think just the last slide is our contact information. Ron and I are happy to answer questions. So at any time, please feel free to reach out. Ron really owns a lot of the federal legislation, and then we coordinate that effort together. But please don't hesitate to reach out if we can answer any questions. And then I think with that, we'll just turn it over for questions, and Kim, kind of connecting to your work very locally.
First, Ron and or Mandy, can you touch very quickly on the Medicaid cuts that also came and how that will affect food banks and food pantries with some of the, because it was I do believe the largest cut in the program's history. And so that will have some implications to food providers as well as health providers across our country and our counties.
Yeah, so I can touch a little bit, and we'll be sure to put a presentation that kind of has an overview with some of our health partners, particularly our RAIs, which are regional accountability entities that are kind of like the hubs for Medicaid across the state of Colorado. And they're doing a great job of putting that information out there. So I'll be sure to post that on our website later this week and share it with you, Kim. But it is very similar in that it is a historic change to the program in terms of a state now having to shoulder the administrative costs of Medicaid. So similarly, where you're going to see drops in benefit levels for SNAP, you're going to see people not be able to stay on Medicaid based on that same kind of restrictions. There's only so much a state can absorb. And for those of you following the state budget last year, we had a $1.2 billion deficit. We are projected to be in a similar deficit this year. As Ron mentioned, some of that is a result of Tabor and that implications in our state. I encourage anybody to take a look at some very nonpartisan factual impacts of how Tabor impacts our state and our ability to fund social services. The Colorado Fiscal Institute does beautiful videos for people who have no idea about tax policy. So I really encourage you to take a look at their videos. So it's a similar piece in that it's going to impact neighbors often at the intersection of people who qualify for SNAP are also on Medicaid. So it's a particularly profound impact to our low income neighbors across Colorado. And there are similar work requirements now for Medicaid, and changing some of those pieces, ability to recertify more often or requirement to recertify more often that are particularly challenging, especially if you do not have access to internet at home, or seniors or neighbors with disabilities where that may be a challenge to know how often you have to do those things. There's also some new pieces around job loss and so it's just a lot for people to keep up with. So we are really going to work with our partners across the state that are connected to Medicaid, making sure we're providing information and really leveraging the strength of these coalition spaces that we're in. So we're making sure to provide neighbors with as much information as possible to avoid falling off any benefits.
Thank you. And there was a question here about who in DC were you able to gain an audience with?
Yeah, well, I'll say one piece, and Ron, I'll let you jump in here. We did meet with every office, with every member of Congress. Congressman Evans was able to come to Weld Food Bank. That was the first food bank he had toured. Unfortunately, that was after the House vote. But continuing to educate our members of Congress, we regularly speak with Senator Bennett and his staff. And as some of you may know, he is on the Senate Agriculture Committee. So previously, that was a very influential committee on the Farm Bill, where all this legislation typically lives. So we do have relationships with all offices. And then a lot of this is really going to be now looking at the state level. And we have legislative champions, Republicans, Democrats across the state who are very actively supportive and champions of our work. And Ron, feel free to jump in and add anything there.
Yeah, I can just say, we're working with every member of the delegation, anyone that will meet with us, really. We've had, as Mandy had said, numerous congressional visits with members of Congress, both in DC and in state and in district. We extended invitations to the entire delegation. We were able to get Congresswoman Diana DeGette at Food Bank of the Rockies. As Mandy had said, we had Congressman Gabe Evans at Weld Food Bank. Really just looking to continue to build those relationships and make sure they understand the work we do and how these federal nutrition programs allow us to better meet the needs in our communities and their constituents in their districts. We hosted a virtual roundtable with Senator Bennett several weeks ago with local and national media in attendance. And that really gave us the opportunity to kind of highlight the far-reaching implications of the package from the perspective, not just of food banks, but from neighbors, partner agencies, a farmer and retailers. We also had an advocacy alert. So if you actually sign up at the link that we had up on our screen, you can get those that went out to our senators and every House member. It allowed people to kind of write their own individual letters using a template about the concerns around cuts to SNAP and Medicaid. So the answer is we'll work with all of them. Anybody that we can get in touch with, we're definitely working with them and giving them the information and the data that they need to make informed decisions.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And maybe Mandy, can you drop in the chat again the link, so if people didn't have chance to see it on when the slide was up, that they can go and sign up there.
I can put
Absolutely.
the slide back up too.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, and so we're all, as a network, really trying to absorb, and we are learning on a minute by minute, data by day time frame on how really all of these changes are going to affect our communities. But what I can tell you is that our food banks and food pantries across our service area, many who are on this call, have seen an increased need before this bill was even passed. So we were, looking at becoming stretched beyond our resources before we had a bill come along that is going to make it much harder for all of us to do our work. And so we had to take a look, really, a really close look at how are we, as Community Food Share, going to be able to support our partners. We have over 40 partners who distribute food directly to individuals, as well as on-site pantries and mobile pantries and senior programs. How will we make sure that we can meet this need that is here and is going to increase as we work through these complications of the bill that's just been passed? And what I will say is that, here at Community Food Share, we are committed to making sure that we have food available to our families and our partners who need it. About 70% of the food in which we distribute goes directly to our partner programs and partner agencies. And we distributed about 13 million pounds of food this past year. And so doing that might look a little different as it has in years past, in terms of we're talking about things of how can we allocate the food resources we have so that we are fairly distributing it across our counties and communities and neighbors and neighborhoods that need it. We purchase food to supplement what's not being donated. This past fiscal year, we spent about $2.4 million in food purchase to get back out into the community. About $1 million of that was due to some state grants that came through for food reimbursement. Those grants are not available at the same levels as they've been in the past. Many of those were due to some of the monies from the ARPA funding that had happened and some statewide access money, above and beyond money that they had to share with us. So as the board is looking through and leadership here, it looks like this year we'll have somewhere in the realm of about 1.5 million to support food purchase. So that'll be down about $1 million from where it was the year before, while we're still looking for resources to help get us back up to that 2 million mark. The variety of food purchase may not be what it has been in the past, where in the past we had enough funding to be able to get a wide variety of items, where now we're really focusing in on what do our partners need and our community need to really provide for their day-to-day. So an example might be where in the past we might have bid on loads of pineapples, which are beautiful, to bring out to our community. The cost of that may be prohibitive in the future, so we may switch to more localized or produce that's easy attainable that we can get out and last longer. So we're really taking a look. Our board, as far as our budget, has given us, if you will, a 5-year runway to get to a zero budget, which is the amount of money we're bringing in and the amount of money we're expending is hopefully zero, gets to that baseline of zero. But our board is investing about $1.6 million over the next 5 years to help get us to that point, so that we can sustain our services to the community. So, I always say there's food banks and food pantries and people who work in human services and nonprofits. Resilience is the word in which we all have. We have great resilience and great creativity to think of ways in which we can keep moving forward and providing for our neighbors, because we know a well-provided for neighbor and community makes a safer, more thriving community. And that's what we want. And that's what we want for our community as well as communities all across this country. And Nancy asked, what impact does the bill appear to have on food available to CFS and distributing agencies? So as of right now, the food which is available comes through the Emergency Food Assistance Program and the Commodity Supplemental Food Program. And where it's been affected currently is we have seen over the past couple of years, and I'm going to ask Mandy and Ron to jump in if I'm mistaken in what I say, is that we've had a lot of what's called surplus loads that have come through, meaning above and beyond what's been put into the Farm Bill as allocated funds for food to go through to food banks. What's changed is that the ability to access these or the money for these surplus loads have gone away. So we're going back to what has been put into the Farm Bill originally and not in excess of what has been put into the Farm Bill. Mandy, Ron, how close was I on that?
Very, very, very close. And
Okay.
to use a appropriate food analogy, I think, Kim, we've talked about this, that there's two pieces to TFAP, the Emergency Food Assistance Program. There's the mashed potatoes and then the gravy. And the gravy is what's been cut, and we need both to meet the need now. There are pieces to this that are both in Farm Bill and that are appropriated by Congress. And then there are also pieces that have previously been funded by the USDA in what's called the CCC. That's the Commodity Credit Corporation. So essentially, it's like the line of credit for the USDA. It is normal for changes in administration to have changes to those programs and what is funded and what are priorities. The problem is, as Kim said, this is coming at a time where there is increased need, inflation, rising housing costs in Colorado, healthcare costs, all of those impacts are making that a particularly challenging and vulnerable time for our neighbors to be experiencing these cuts. Other programs that were particularly influential in Colorado were the Local Food Purchasing Agreement, LFPA. Previously, we got 7.5, a little over 7 million. There were 2 rounds of that. And that was solely for the purchase of local food. And so that really benefited a lot of small and mid-sized farms to provide food to our network. We were one of the 5 food banks were one of the largest distributors of that local food to partners across Colorado, and really beneficial to the Colorado agricultural community, particularly those small and mid-sized farms, which really struggled to have access to markets like that. And we lost about 5.5 million was supposed to be coming in this next fiscal year, so that was cut. So again, that's an impact to our network to purchase local food and an impact to Colorado farms. The other piece I think that Kim mentioned that's a state one is the Community Food Provider Assistance Grant. That was funded for the first time in the state budget last legislative session at $3 million. And that is for food banks and food pantries to purchase food with a focus on either culturally relevant items or Colorado agricultural products. So that line item, because of our state budget challenges this past year, went from 3 million to 2 million. So again, that's another cut that we're experiencing here at the state level. But we are really, like Kim said, at Feeding Colorado, trying to collectively work together to identify opportunities for sourcing. And we are very heavily involved with the Colorado agricultural community, particularly the Fruit and Veggie Growers Association, on leveraging some of those programs and priorities to make sure agricultural communities are not feeling this impact at doing what we can really to partner with them, because we know those same communities often have the highest rates of food insecurity.
I can just add to that briefly too. We do know that the thrifty or the emergency food assistance program will be impacted by the thrifty food plan updates. We don't have those exact numbers yet. I know they had ran an estimate when it was first in the House, and it started in the House and went over to the Senate, then it went back to the House, and it changed a couple of times through that process. So I don't know where it ended up landing, but I know when it was first in the House, they were projecting about $100 million less for TFAP, which for context is about, at least for the regular allocations outside of the Commodity Credit Corporation, about 20% cut. There was something else that was, oh, yes. Oh, I had one positive piece to add as well. So the Commodity Supplemental Food Program, the fight around for senior boxes is actually still ongoing. The president originally in his proposed FY26 budget had proposed to eliminate it entirely. But the House Appropriations Committee has passed a budget that's now going to the floor that actually includes it at the levels that it had previously been funded. So, ultimately the president can make his proposals, but it's up to Congress to allocate that funding. And that is a significant win given the conversations that we've been having at continuing to fund the senior box program at the levels that it has been. So I did want to flag that positive piece.
Yeah, and I would also say that, the Feeding America Network, now that this bill has been passed, is really focusing in now on how can the network as a whole have conversations and the right conversations and the right kind of advocacy to get more food into the system. Many of you during COVID times may remember there was a large farm to food bank program that happened where there was boxes that came to us of really great proteins, meats, dairies that were all contracted through the government with local farms to help farmers during this very difficult time of the health emergency. But looking at how can a program similar be instated to help both farmers and individuals in need of food. So the next fight, if you will, or the next movement that we'll be moving on is really trying to say, okay, if we're going to make some cuts that are going to be detrimental to across the country, I think the number, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is about 9.5 billion meals are going to be lost across the country. And to put it in some kind of context, the entire Feeding America Food Bank Network last year did about 5 billion meals. So we're losing more. We're going to have a deficit of more meals than we actually put out in the last fiscal year. So really thinking about, it's now really the focus is laser on how are we going to get food to individuals? And if there's not funding to do that, what can we work with the government to do to make sure there's more food getting into the system that can be distributed? So, that's really important too, as if you sign up with Feeding Colorado as well, they'll give you those advocacy alerts of kind of what's happening on a national level. All of the information that I share with our community, I literally get from Ron and Mandy because they're so excellent at what they do, and really thinking about how can we as a community come together and really support our own community in terms of this, what's going to be a very rough time. As we already know, what throws a lot of individuals into food insecurity here and the need for food banks and food pantries is our cost of living here. So many people cannot afford to live here and have all the money they need for all their basic needs. And so that's only going to elevate in these next couple of years. And so really thinking about how can we collaborate, coordinate, and do our best to make sure our communities are fed. Are there any other questions that we can answer? Or I have a lot of team members on here, or anything I didn't address? Well, great. Once again, thank you all so much for coming and learning. And we'll keep passing information along as we have it and as we learn implications of what's coming down. But always you can reach out to anyone at Community Food Share. You can reach out to Feeding Colorado. There is a question that you mentioned the new work requirements could go into effect immediately on passage. What is the most likely time frame?
We will be learning that alongside of all of you. Immediately has been very loosely defined in many different ways. So Colorado will be calling a special session either later this month or in early August to address some of these impacts, both from SNAP and from Medicaid to our state budget and our state agencies that administer these programs. So that'll be happening pretty soon. But again, we'll continue to just post these updates on our social media or in a newsletter and be sure to share with Kim. But we are not sure. We can't clearly define what immediately means, but certainly in the next, I would say 30 to 60 days.
Thank you.
Kim, I thought of one thing. Thanks everyone for being here. I'm a part of the leadership team here at Community Food Share, and we've been having a lot of conversations as Kim and Mandy and Ron have mentioned. And I think it can be easy to maybe get caught in some of the, at least for me, big feelings that come with a lot of news and a lot of policies. And there's a lot of things that I really don't understand, and I'm grateful that we have Mandy and Ron so they can break things down for me. But one thing that I continue to fall back on, and Kim mentioned this, is it might look and feel different, but our doors will always remain open to those who need our services. And one way to support this ongoing work is certainly, if you're able to support Community Food Share philanthropically, also come in and volunteer. We would love to have you. And truly another way to support is to reach out and ask those questions. So we're in it together, and these small little actions do make a really big difference. So that's what I'll add.
Thank you, Kaylee. Beautifully said.
Very beautiful. And yes, agree this environment can be a little challenging, especially those of you doing the frontline work, or whether you are a neighbor accessing services in this network or volunteers. I think one of my colleagues in Ohio who said this is, we're just going to continue to do the next right thing for the communities that we serve. So really appreciate all of you being here.
Thank you so much. And really feel free to reach out at any time if needed, but we appreciate the time you've given us today.